Little girl whispers there's a secret camera in your office. Millionaire exposes spy fiancé. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, smash the subscribe button and turn on notification. It tells YouTube this story is worth your time. Stephen built his empire from nothing. 20 years ago, he started with a laptop and a dream in a cramped apartment. Now his company employed 300 people across 12 states. Every decision he made affected hundreds of families. Every contract he signed moved millions of dollars. Success hadn't made him cold. He still remembered what it felt like to struggle. His fiancée Eleanor understood his world perfectly. She moved through corporate events like she belonged there. Elegant conversations with board members. Graceful handling of business dinners. She even cared about his safety. "Stephen, your office security is outdated," she had said 3 weeks ago. "Let me help you upgrade everything. New cameras in the hallway. Better locks on the doors. Motion sensors by the windows." Eleanor spent hours with the tech team. She supervised every installation. She tested every system personally. Stephanie lived with her great-aunt Maria across town. Maria was kind but distant. She worked double shifts at the hospital and came home exhausted. The house stayed quiet most days. When Stephen called to invite Stephanie for an afternoon visit, Maria seemed relieved. "She needs family connection," Maria had whispered over the phone. "She needs someone who has time." The elevator ride to the 35th floor fascinated Stephanie. Glass walls showed the city shrinking below. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world she had only seen in movies. Marble floors stretched like mirrors. Crystal chandeliers hung from tall ceilings. Everything gleamed under perfect lighting. But something about the space felt empty. Beautiful but cold. Stephen's office occupied the entire corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed the city skyline. A conference table seated 12 people. Leather furniture cost more than most people's cars. Stephanie walked the room like an explorer in a museum. Her small hands touched nothing. Her eyes examined everything. The desk dominated the center of the room. Stephen sat behind it like a king on his throne. Phone calls flowed one after another. Contract negotiations. Investment discussions. Deal closings that would make headlines tomorrow. Stephanie settled into a chair nearby. She watched her uncle work with quiet admiration. He commanded respect from everyone who called. People listened when he spoke. But Stephanie's attention drifted upward. The ceiling tiles formed perfect squares across the room. Most looked identical. Clean white panels with tiny holes for ventilation. One tile near Stephen's desk looked different. Slightly askew. A shadow fell across its edge in an odd way. She stood on her chair for a better view. There, a reflection. Something small and metallic caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. It winked at her like a hidden eye. A thin wire ran along the ceiling joint. So thin most people would miss it completely. Stephanie climbed down and approached Stephen's chair. Her heart pounded. Should she say something? What if she was wrong? But the feeling in her stomach told her she wasn't wrong. She leaned close to his ear and whispered those one sentence that would change everything. Stephen's body went rigid. His phone call forgotten. His fingers white against the desk edge. "What did you just say?" he whispered back. "There's a secret camera in your office," she repeated, pointing toward the ceiling tile. Stephen's eyes followed her finger. His face went pale. The CEO in him awakened. Sharp. Calculating. Dangerous. Someone had been watching his every move. Stephen's mind raced between logic and fear. A 10-year-old child claiming there was surveillance equipment in his private office. It sounded impossible. But Stephanie had never lied to him. Her voice carried absolute certainty. He looked around the room with new eyes. Every shadow seemed suspicious. Every surface could hide secrets. "Stay right there," he told Stephanie quietly. His voice had changed. The warm uncle disappeared. The CEO emerged. Stephen stood slowly and walked to the windows. His movements were controlled, but his hands trembled slightly. 20 years of building his company. Thousands of confidential meetings held in this exact spot. Board discussions. Merger negotiations. Salary information. Client secrets. If someone had been recording everything. He started with the obvious places. Behind picture frames first. His fingers explored the edges of each photograph. Family portraits. Business awards. Handshake moments with important people. Nothing. The bookshelf came next. Leather-bound volumes lined the shelves. Legal texts. Business journals. Stephen pulled books forward and peered behind them. He ran his hands along the wooden backing. Still nothing. Stephanie watched from her chair without moving. Her dark eyes followed every search. She said nothing but occasionally turned her gaze back to the ceiling. Back to that one tile that had caught her attention. Stephen noticed her repeated glances upward. He examined his desk drawers one by one. Pulled them completely out to check for devices taped underneath. Opened his computer tower and searched inside. Checked behind the monitor screens. The search became more desperate. More frantic. Air vents. Light fixtures. The backs of chairs. Stephen inspected everything within reach. Sweat formed on his forehead despite the cool office temperature. His breathing grew shallow. What if Stephanie was right? What if someone had been watching him for weeks? Months? The phone on his desk rang. Stephen ignored it. His assistant's voice came through the intercom announcing another call. He turned off the system completely. This search required total concentration. Stephen grabbed his office chair and rolled it beneath the ceiling tile Stephanie kept looking at. He climbed up carefully. The tile was 12 feet above the floor. At his full height, he could barely reach it. His fingers pressed against the panel. It moved slightly. Loose. Not properly secured like the others. He pushed the tile up and slid it aside. Dust particles danced in the afternoon sunlight. Stephen reached into the dark space above. His hand touched something hard. Cold. Metallic. He pulled down a device no bigger than a matchbox. Sleek black plastic with a tiny lens facing downward. A micro camera with wireless transmission capability. Professional-grade equipment. Not some amateur spy toy. This was expensive. Military quality. Stephen climbed down from the chair holding the camera like evidence at a crime scene. His face had gone completely white. The device felt heavy in his palm despite weighing almost nothing. Someone had been recording his every conversation. Every phone call. Every private moment in his office. The camera's angle would capture everything happening at his desk. Every document he reviewed. Every contract he signed. Every confidential discussion with clients and board members. 20 years of building trust with investors. Gone. His reputation built on discretion and security. Destroyed. But who? Who had access to install this equipment? Who knew his office layout well enough to choose the perfect hiding spot? The answer hit him like a physical blow to the chest. Eleanor's face flashed in his mind. Her insistence on upgrading security. Her meetings with the installation team. Her detailed knowledge of his office systems. "I want to make sure you're completely safe," she had said. "These contractors are the best in the city. They know exactly where to place everything for maximum coverage." The security upgrades had given her cover. Access. Opportunity. While he thought she was protecting him, she was positioning cameras to spy on him. The woman he planned to marry had been watching his every move. Stephen sank into his chair. The camera sat on his desk like a smoking gun. His engagement ring plans. His trust. His future. Everything built on lies. Stephanie approached quietly and stood beside his chair. She placed her small hand on his arm. "I'm sorry, Uncle Stephen," she whispered. He looked at this 10-year-old child who had just saved his entire company. Her courage amazed him. While adults missed obvious signs, she saw the truth clearly. "Don't be sorry," he said softly. "You saved me from something terrible." But now came the hardest part. Confronting Eleanor. Demanding answers. Facing the woman who had betrayed him in the most personal way possible. Stephen picked up the camera and studied it closely. Tiny wires. Advanced technology. This equipment cost thousands of dollars. Someone had invested serious money in spying on him. The office felt different now. Violated. No longer his sanctuary but a crime scene. Every memory of Eleanor in this room now seemed tainted with deception. Stephen made his decision. Tonight, he would confront her with the evidence. Tonight, he would learn the full truth about the woman he thought he loved. Stephen drove home in complete silence. The camera sat in his jacket pocket like a loaded weapon. His anger burned cold and calculated. No screaming. No reckless accusations. This required surgical precision. He had dropped Stephanie at Maria's house first. "Stay here tonight," he told his niece gently. "I have something important to handle." She squeezed his hand. "Will you be okay, Uncle Stephen?" "I will be now. Thanks to you." Eleanor's car was in the driveway. Light glowed from the living room windows. Stephen sat in his car for a moment, preparing himself. Inside that house lived a stranger wearing the face of the woman he loved. He walked to the front door and used his key. Normal. Casual. Just like any other evening. Eleanor sat at the dining table surrounded by wedding planning materials. Color samples. Flower arrangements. Guest lists written in her elegant handwriting. She looked up and smiled. "Stephen. Perfect timing. I've narrowed down the venue options to 3 amazing choices. Come look at these photos." Her voice was warm. Loving. The same voice that had whispered sweet words for months. Stephen walked slowly to the table. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. The wedding materials spread between them like a mockery. Without a word, he reached into his jacket pocket. The camera landed on the table with a soft thud. Right on top of the flower arrangements. Eleanor's smile froze. Her eyes locked onto the device. For 3 seconds, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the kitchen clock ticking on the wall. "What is that?" she asked. Her voice had changed. Careful now. Guarded. You tell me, Stephen replied quietly. Eleanor stared at the camera. Her hands remained folded in her lap, but her fingers had gone white. I've never seen it before. Where did you find it? In my office ceiling. Pointed directly at my desk. Recording everything. That's impossible. Who would do such a thing? Her performance was flawless. Shock. Concern. Confusion. If Stephen hadn't found the camera himself, he might have believed her. Someone with access, Stephen said. Someone who knew my office layout perfectly. Someone who understood security systems. Someone who supervised the recent upgrades. Eleanor's breathing changed. Shallow. Quick. Stephen, you can't possibly think that the contractors you recommended installed this camera. During the security upgrade you insisted on. The mask began to slip. Eleanor's composed expression cracked around the edges. Her eyes darted toward the door. Toward her purse. Calculating escape routes. This is crazy, she whispered. Why would I spy on you? I love you. We're getting married next month. Stephen picked up the wedding guest list. Whose names are really on this list, Eleanor? Yours? Or your employer's? The question hit like a punch. Eleanor's face went completely pale. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. I don't know what you're talking about. Sit down. His voice carried authority. CEO authority. Eleanor hesitated, then slowly picked up her chair and Saturday. I know what you are, Stephen continued. Corporate spy. Industrial espionage. Someone paid you to get close to me. To record my private conversations. To steal my company's secrets. Eleanor's hands trembled now. The confident woman who had charmed board members and impressed investors was disappearing before his eyes. You don't understand, she said desperately. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. They forced me, Stephen. They had compromising photos. They threatened to destroy my career. I had no choice. The confession tumbled out. Finally. Truth mixed with manipulation. But then I fell in love with you. Really fell in love. The feelings became real. Stephen leaned back in his chair. When did you fall in love, Eleanor? Before or after you planted the camera? Before or after you recorded my private phone calls? Before or after you sold my confidential information? Each question hit like a hammer blow. Eleanor flinched with every word. The feelings are real now, she pleaded. We can get past this. I can fix everything. I'll tell them I'm done. We can still get married. We can? Stop. Stephen's voice cut through her desperation like a blade. You chose the camera placement yourself. Tested it personally. Made sure it captured every angle of my desk. That wasn't blackmail, Eleanor. That was professional expertise. He stood up and walked to the window. A 10-year-old child saw through your deception in 5 minutes. An innocent little girl noticed what I missed for months. Eleanor began to cry. Real tears or more performance? Stephen no longer cared. Which company? He asked. Who's paying you? Silence. Tell me, or I call the FBI right now. Meridian Industries, she whispered. They wanted your client list. Your bidding strategies. Your expansion plans. Stephen's biggest competitor. The company that had lost 3 major contracts to him this year. How long? 6 months. Since we started dating. Every romantic dinner. Every intimate conversation. Every moment of trust and vulnerability. All of it calculated. All of it lies. Stephen pulled his phone from his pocket and found Eleanor's contact information. He deleted it while she watched. "Get out," he said quietly. "Stephen, please. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. If you contact me again, I'll have you arrested." Eleanor stood on shaking legs. She gathered her purse and keys with trembling hands. At the door, she turned back one last time. "I did love you." That part was real. Stephen didn't look at her. No. It wasn't. The door closed with a soft click. Stephen sat alone among the scattered wedding plans. The engagement ring he had bought sat in his bedroom drawer. Tomorrow, he would return it. Tonight, he would call his lawyer. And his security team. And possibly the FBI. But first, he would call Stephanie. To thank the brave little girl who had saved his life. Stephen sat in his empty house until 3 in the morning. The silence felt different now. Not peaceful. Just hollow. The wedding materials still covered the dining table like evidence of his foolishness. He felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just a strange emptiness where his future used to be. Dawn brought responsibility. Stephen called his head of security first. Then his lawyer. Then his insurance company. The camera would need forensic analysis. His office required a complete security sweep. Every conversation from the past 6 months needed review. "We'll find out exactly what they recorded," his lawyer assured him. "And we'll pursue criminal charges." Stephen nodded but felt no satisfaction. The damage was already done. His assistant cancelled all meetings for the day. Board members would have questions. Clients would demand explanations. The business press would eventually catch wind of the story. But Stephen's thoughts kept drifting to someone else entirely. The image of Stephanie sitting quietly in his office wouldn't leave his mind. Her small hand pointing toward the ceiling. Her whispered warning that changed everything. While he had been blind to betrayal happening right in front of him, a 10-year-old child saw the truth immediately. Stephen drove to Maria's house that afternoon. The neighborhood was older. Working class. Houses packed close together with tiny yards and chain-link fences. Maria answered the door looking exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Scrubs wrinkled from a double shift at the hospital. "Stephen? Is everything okay? I need to talk to you about Stephanie." They sat in Maria's small kitchen while Stephanie played quietly in the living room. Maria poured coffee from a pot that had seen better days. "She's a good kid," Maria said. "Never causes trouble. Does her homework without being asked. But she's so quiet. So serious for someone her age." Stephen watched Stephanie through the doorway. She sat alone on the floor reading a library book. "I work 16-hour shifts most days," Maria continued. "I try to give her what she needs, but honestly, I'm barely keeping my own head above water. When her parents died in that car accident 2 years ago, I stepped up because family is family. But I'm not really equipped for raising a child." The truth hung heavy in the small kitchen. "She talks about you sometimes," Maria added quietly. "Says you have a big empty house with lots of rooms. Says you seemed lonely too." Stephen's chest tightened. Stephanie had seen his loneliness as clearly as she had seen the hidden camera. What would happen if she had another option? Stephen asked carefully. If someone wanted to give her a real home. Maria studied his face. You mean adoption? I mean a family. Someone who could be there when she comes home from school. Someone who could help with homework and drive her to friends' houses and worry about her when she's late. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Stephen, I love that little girl. But I can't give her what she deserves. She needs someone with time. With patience. With space in their life for a child. They both looked toward the living room where Stephanie sat alone with her book. She saved my entire company yesterday, Stephen said softly. But more than that, she saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I owe her everything. She would be lucky to have you, Maria whispered. Stephen realized the truth in that moment. Stephanie hadn't just saved his business. She had saved him from a life built on lies. And maybe, just maybe, he could save her from a life of loneliness. They both needed the same thing. A real family. A real home. A real connection. The empty rooms in his house suddenly seemed full of possibility. A child's laughter. Homework at the kitchen table. Bedtime stories. School plays. Parent-teacher conferences. All the things money couldn't buy but love could create. Stephen stood up with new purpose. I want to start the adoption process. Today. For the first time in months, he felt truly excited about the future. The paperwork took 3 months. Background checks. Home visits. Interviews with social workers. Stephen approached adoption with the same determination he brought to business deals. But this time, the stakes were personal. Maria signed the papers with tears in her eyes. Take care of her, she whispered to Stephen. She deserves everything good in this world. Stephanie packed her few belongings in 2 small suitcases. Her entire life fit in the back seat of Stephen's car. The first night in Stephen's house, Stephanie sat at the kitchen table doing homework while he cooked dinner. Neither of them spoke much. Both adjusting to the strange new rhythm of family life. Uncle Stephen, she said quietly. Just Stephen now. Or Dad, if you want. She smiled. Dad, thank you for saving me too. Weeks passed. Stephen learned to braid hair for school picture day. Stephanie learned to set the table for 2 people instead of eating alone. They discovered they both liked Saturday morning cartoons and pancakes shaped like animals. The empty house filled with sound. Laughter. Conversation. The television playing in the background. Footsteps on the stairs. Stephen's business recovered completely. His security team found no evidence that Meridian Industries had received any sensitive information. Eleanor's camera had been installed for only 2 weeks before Stephanie discovered it. 2 weeks. If she hadn't spoken up, months of confidential data would have been stolen. One evening, Stephanie found Stephen in his home office reviewing contracts. She knocked on the door frame. Is this room safe now? She asked. Stephen looked up from his papers. It's safe. But more importantly, it's not the most important room in the house anymore. What is? Wherever you are. 6 months later, Stephen stood in the kitchen making Stephanie's lunch for school. She sat at the counter eating cereal and reading a book. Normal. Peaceful. Perfect. Dad, she said without looking up. I'm glad I whispered to you that day. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Stephen thought about Eleanor sometimes. She had disappeared completely after their confrontation. No contact. No attempts at reconciliation. Like she had never existed. But he felt no bitterness. Her betrayal had led him to the most important relationship of his life. That afternoon, Stephanie came home from school with a drawing. 2 stick figures standing in front of a house. One tall, one small. Both smiling. "It's us," she said proudly. Stephen hung it on the refrigerator next to her report card and soccer schedule. The refrigerator door had become a gallery of their new life together. Sometimes the smallest voice speaks the loudest truth. A 10-year-old's whisper in a silent office had changed 2 lives forever. Stephen was saved from financial ruin and emotional devastation. Stephanie was saved from loneliness and uncertainty. They had found each other in the darkest moment and created something beautiful. Sometimes the smallest voice speaks the loudest truth. If you were gripped by Stephen and Stephanie's story of betrayal, courage, and finding family in the darkest place, show your support. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss the next real-life story that will leave you breathless. The corporate spy who tried to destroy Stephen's life had unknowingly given him the greatest gift possible. A daughter. A family. A reason to come home each day. One sentence had changed everything. "There's a secret camera in your office." But the most important words came later. "Dad, thank you for saving me too." This story proves truth can be stranger than fiction. What part shocked you the most? The hidden camera? The fiancé's confession? Or the beautiful adoption ending? Let me know in the comments and share this video with someone who loves a jaw-dropping story. In the end, the CEO who had everything discovered what he had been missing all along. And the little girl who had nothing found everything she had ever wanted.